never Trump. I'll break it down to a couple. Nigeria, Lagos has become one of the largest exporters of Pacific ivory in the world.
Live in a third world nation where your votes will get stolen if you can vote there at all.
Welcome to Around the World with Dane Waters. I'm your host, Dane Waters. It is always a great honor to be here. And you know what? This is the end of the year. And we're actually about to go into our third year of the show. I mean, it's amazing that people actually still want to listen to us, talk to us. And, you know, I don't know. I guess it's just my phenomenal good looks. I don't know what it is. But anyway, but let's just really do a quick recap before we get to our show today and talk about 2025 and 2026. What's going on around the world? I would say that what you're seeing in Venezuela, where the CIA just attacked a port, one of the major ports in Venezuela. They're trying to stranglehold the economy there to try to force Maduro out. And, yeah, I think they're making progress there, but we'll also talk about that in the show. But one of the interesting thing also is about, I know it's a very random thing, but you know, I watched the P. Diddy documentary the other day about you know, him and his trials and tribulations. And the other day, somebody asked President Trump if he was going to pardon P. Diddy. He said it's a very difficult thing to decide. He said, you know, because the other day he was saying nice things about me, so therefore maybe I should. I mean, President Trump is a very transactional person. That's all there is to it. And you know, if you treat him nicely, you'll get what you want. Maybe that's why he doesn't like me. Who knows? We'll have to figure that one out in the future for 2026. But in 2025, you know, I wrote this op-ed that I'm going to get published in Foreign Affairs, hopefully, and it really talks about 2025 because, you know, what's happening now between 2025 and 2026 is that a lot has happened in 2025 that's actually setting the stage for 2026. And when I talk about that, I talk about primarily, and I'll just be blunt about it, the abdication of America and the United States in global affairs. Now, listen, I have a lot of friends in America, and they all only care about domestic issues, and I respect the fact that they care about domestic issues, but what they seem to forget is that what happens around the world comes home to roost. It really does. But America has abdicated its responsibility, and we'll talk about those one-on-one. But I will say, because I'm going to ask you this question here in a second, I will say that the most important thing that happened in 2025 is the fundamental change in U.S. foreign policy, that no longer is it important for the protection of freedom and democracy to prevail. No longer are we worried about human rights. No longer are we worried about, protecting territorial integrity. No longer are we worried about the rule of law. You know, we've become a very transactional government. And I think that's going to have tremendous repercussions in 2026, which we'll talk about in the next segment of the show. But that is what I believe is the most important thing and also detrimental thing that's happened in 2025. I'm going to ask you, what do you think about that statement, number one? And number two is, what do you think was the most important thing that happened in 2025?
Well, first of all, the most important thing that happened in 2025 is the election of Donald Trump. For the first time in the history of the United States, you elected a man whose background is core business. Historically, you've elected politicians, whether it's Nixon or Ford or Jimmy Carter and so on and so forth. You elected a man whose background is balancing his books, profit and loss accounts, and that's how he sees the world, with his religious base. And once you appoint a man who only knows one thing, profit and loss, he sees conflicts in those terms. If Russia is invading Ukraine, he's thinking, why should America give Ukraine $500 million, $1 trillion to fight the war, to defend, 10 square miles, 100 square miles of real estate? And that's how he sees it. So from his point of view, it makes no economic sense. If China invades Taiwan, which is an island, what is the strategic loss to the United States of America? And once you have a president who sees the world through that pair of glasses, it is difficult to change how he thinks. Now, that's going to happen for a 4-year term of his presidency. When he leaves office, depends on who takes over. If it's a Democrat, all that will be reversed. If it's a Republican with the same base, then there'll be a continuation, maybe not as hard. So yeah, the world has changed, but you know, America has the greatest debt in the world, but because you print your currency and the dollar, the almighty dollar, is the currency of the world, you have a big debt, you just print more money. He sees it differently. You have a big debt, you have to balance your books, regardless of the fact that you can just print the dollar. So I think this is a function of the President of the United States as opposed to a policy change for the United States. So this will last for 4 years. Longer if a Republican who shares his views takes over the White House.
Well, let me say fundamentally, I agree with you. I think that the election of Donald Trump, you know, and I'm sure he'll be smiling when he listens to the show or hears about the show, because we're talking about him, because it's all about his ego. So, you know, and I'm sure what's interesting, he's probably going to be looking at the news and say, how many people on their end of year talked about me? And he's going to be very excited about that, because I think everyone's going to be talking about him. So I agree. I mean, the election of Donald Trump, I think was one of the, I think it's a generational change that's going to take place. So I agree with you on that. Number two, I agree with you on the fact that he's a transactional president. It's all about money. You're right. It's all about money. It's about, you know, now I don't agree necessarily with the profit and loss, because he's notorious for just filing bankruptcy if he doesn't want to pay his bills. So I'm waiting for him just to tell all of the international creditors like China and others to go kiss off, and he's just not going to pay them, you know, which actually I would support that if he decided to do that. But this is the thing, Ben. You know, so it's one thing to say, listen, it's about the economy, it's about making money. If you treat America as a business, and America as a business needs to make money, and that, you know, the shareholders are Americans. Okay, if you look at the world through that lens, okay, makes sense. That's exactly what he's doing. But there comes a cost to that. There comes a cost to that, is that if America, in my opinion, is not standing up for freedom and democracy and protecting the importance of freedom and democracy, in 3 years, or a total of 4 years, the bad people are going to have a foothold in the rest of the world. And so where is that going to put us? I mean, if you were president, let me ask you this question. If you were president of Nigeria, you know, and you had the choice between only caring about the economy of the country or ensuring that there's peace and prosperity in the region, or peace and prosperity in the world, where would you come down on that?
If I was president of Nigeria, I'd be concerned about Nigeria first, West Africa second, and Africa third. I may not be concerned about Europe. I may not be concerned about Latin America or Asia. It'll be in my territory. Now, Trump is president of the United States. He's concerned about South America. That's his territory. So he's actively engaging in military activities in his backyard, as Americans like to call it, Venezuela, Colombia, maybe Brazil, the islands, and so on and so forth. In the world today, in the last 50 years, there is no country like the United States of America. It's a superpower. Britain is not concerned about the world. Russia is not concerned about the world. China is only concerned about the economy of China and the economy of the world as it affects China. So I think this question is unique for only Americans. There's only one superpower. Russia is not a superpower. Russia is concerned about its environment. You know, Israel's environment. America is a superpower, the only military power in the world. Take the strikes. For the first time, let me digress for a second. For the first time, Nigeria and America are cooperating in getting rid of the militant group in northern Nigeria. This is significant because that war and these Islamic militants affect the world, not Nigeria. For the first time, America is bombing these guys, and we love it. So let me ask you, what is the cost of one missile America is using? Tomahawk missile, $10, $20 million. If it's $10 million and America dropped 16, that's $160 million. If it's $20 million a bomb, that's $320 million. That's what we've saved having America as a partner. So yeah, we like America getting involved in helping Nigeria and helping Africa with the bad guys. But if I was president of Nigeria, that's what I would want. Have a collaboration with the United States or Britain or Germany or whoever who wants to help us fight this war. So yeah, I would be excited about that. I may not be concerned about the rest of the world because I don't think like that.
Let's go to South America, actually, because I want to talk about Venezuela. I mean, what's going on there? I mean, President Trump, as we all know, is trying to make the war on Maduro, the president of Venezuela, about drugs and about ending the war on drugs. But I think he wants regime change, which I have to be very clear. I'm totally supportive of regime change in Venezuela. And I wish he'd just come out and call it what it is. But what do you make of what's going? What do you think? What do you make of what's going on in Venezuela? And do you think that sets a precedent for 2026?
I think Maduro is a lousy president. He's ruined the economy of Venezuela. The question is, does America have the right to change the government because they don't like the guy? And how does it affect America? If you have a lot of immigrants coming to America, populating the United States with guys who speak Spanish, I guess that could piss off some people. If he's sending drugs to America, that's a horrible thing. And whatever the reasons are for Trump to try to have a regime change in Venezuela, you and I agree on one thing. Maduro, whatever he calls himself, is a lousy leader and he should go. Now, how he goes, I guess that's up to debate. But I think he should go. Venezuela should be an incredibly wealthy nation, badly led. And, if he has to go, he has to go. How he goes, that's a different conversation. Will America invade? I don't know. Will the threat alone get him to step down? And, take Panama. I was in Panama in '86 at a Miss Universe pageant. I met Noriega. And he was a pretty good dancer at the coronation ball. I think 1 or 2 years later, he was kicked out of office. I think, was it Bush? Bush invaded Panama and took him out. I don't know if he's dead or still in prison. No, so the question is America the world's policeman? Is America the country that determines who rules and doesn't rule in any part of the world? Is America to decide if they take you out militarily or having a conversation or making sure your election is done in such a way that they like who takes over, like what happened in Africa after independence when African leaders were killed because they did not support the West? It's a very tough question. But let me ask this question. This is important.
Yes. This question, because this is a fundamental question. If you talk about what the responsibility of a leader of a country in helping or being involved in deciding what happens in another country. Okay, we talk about, is it right for America to try to have a regime change in Venezuela? Okay, great. But then let me ask this question. Then what is the difference between an African country when there's a coup in your neighboring country to try to stop that coup? What is the difference?
Well, I don't think African countries interfere in the internal affairs of another African country. I don't know of any. I think it's usually the West.
Didn't President Tinubu, which, by the way, to be very clear, I agree with, because I think President Tinubu should do this. But didn't President Tinubu, when there was a potential coup the other day, get involved? I think it was in Niger. I forgot exactly where it was.
I think he had a conversation. He didn't militarily try to intervene in another country. I never supported the coup. I believe in democracy. What Tinubu did was right. He stopped short of an invasion. He stopped short of militarily taking over those countries. And, these are little tiny countries. He could have done it if he wanted to. But I think he made the right speech in asking for democracy in those countries. He made the right statement by asking for the reversal to have free and fair elections in those countries. But he stopped short of an invasion. And I think that decision was right.
Yeah, but still, I mean, even an invasion. But this is a fundamental thing about 2025. If we look back to 2025, we look about Russia invading Ukraine. We look about what's happening in Venezuela. We talk about what Israel's doing in the Gaza and West Bank, which we're going to talk about for the 2026 segment. I mean, so the justification. I despise President Putin with a passion. I'm not in any way trying to support
Definitely.
His justification for invading Ukraine, which is, I think, is BS, to be honest with you, is that, hey, they were thinking about joining NATO. I can't allow a neighboring country to join NATO, and so I have to invade. You have Netanyahu saying that, okay, we have to invade Syria, or we have to attack Syria, or we have to attack Iran, or we have to be involved in Lebanon, is because to protect our country, and to protect ourselves. And you have Trump saying, okay, we have to attack Venezuela, or be involved in Venezuela as a way to protect America. I mean, where's the line? I mean, this is what we're going to see, and I think we're going to see more of this in 2026. When you have a leader of a country, and if something's happening in another country, I mean, let's think about World War II. You had Adolf Hitler doing all this stuff, invading other countries. Should we have allowed that to happen, or should we have stopped it in advance? If we know, for example, like the whole argument about Iran and keeping Iran from getting nuclear weapons is because they'll do something nefarious around the world. Should leaders of the world, and this goes back to the core issue about America's involvement, should leaders of the world, if they think that a neighboring country or a country in the region is going to do something that's detrimental to the region, that then will be detrimental to their country, do you think that they should act? Whether it's verbally, whether it's militarily, or whether it's economically?
There's no clear-cut answer to that question. If you said to me, should Iran be allowed to have the bomb? Hell no. They shouldn't be allowed to have the bomb. So whatever it takes to stop them having the bomb, they have to be stopped. If Venezuela is a threat to the United States because of a mass migration of its citizens, because they are suffering in the country and drugs coming to the United States, then I would support a regime change. Now, there are two issues here. What a country needs to protect its borders and how he tells the story. So if I want a regime change like Putin wants to annex Ukraine, so he comes up with an excuse. It makes no sense whatsoever what Putin is doing. That makes no sense. So there's no clear-cut answer to your question. Some make sense, some don't. Some, because of domestic problems in a country, he needs a diversion. I think Netanyahu needs tons of diversions to stay in power. So he has to create wars across the world to stay in power. I think his domestic problems created the possibilities of these wars. Let's go back to America. Nixon, when he had his crisis, Watergate, he focused on foreign policy with Henry Kissinger. He wanted to continue the war, the bombings, and so on and so forth in Vietnam. He needed a distraction, but ultimately they got him for his crimes in America. These things can only last for so long. The beauty of democracy is no matter what you say, no matter what you do, you have an election in 4 years. Sooner or later, you'll be out of office. The Western world cannot have dictators that rule for 50 years. Sooner or later, you'll be out of office and you'll be answerable.
Yeah, but whose responsibility? They're dictators. I mean, this goes back to the core issue about 2025 we talk about, and that is where America has abdicated, in my opinion, their global responsibility, whether you want to call it a global policeman or whether you want to talk about the protector of freedom and democracy, whatever role you want to define that as. Without America doing that, I mean, just ask you this. Do you think the world is safer now because of Donald Trump, or less safe? I won't even make it about Donald Trump. Do you think the world is less safe because of America's change in their foreign policy, or do you think it's more safe?
It depends on from what perspective you see the world. From the American perspective, it's cheaper for America, safer for America, because if a war takes place 10,000 miles away, it doesn't affect the American citizen, why should they care? Think about it, because some kid is homeless in Los Angeles, some kid is homeless in Houston, and that kid needs a home, that kid needs care, he had medical attention, needs a job. So a mayor, a governor, a president of the United States is thinking of that kid who's homeless, thinking of his immigration policy. After the Second World War, America has thought about protecting the world. Now, 50, 70 years have passed. The values have changed. They don't think about that war anymore. They don't think about whether the world is safer or not safer. They look at it this way. Is it safer in the context of America, or not safe in the context of two countries in far-flung places killing each other? Well, so it depends on You know, it's a
let me
difficult
ask you-
question to
I know,
answer.
I know. This is the thing with foreign policy. There are no black and white answers. I mean, there's
Okay.
no right, there aren't. I mean, but this is the fundamental question. Once again, me as an American, the fundamental question to me is that, okay, if America only focuses on America, if America only focuses on crime, internal and homelessness, as you're talking about, and taking care of the senior citizens, if America only focuses on those things, I mean, would you agree that the world is filled with bad people, whether it's President Putin of Russia, or whether it's China, or whether the world is filled with bad people? So if America decides to say, okay, I don't want to be involved in the rest of the world anymore, don't you think the bad people and the bad actors are just going to take advantage of that opportunity? And don't you think they did that in 2025?
I agree with you completely. The bad actors are going to take advantage. Take Putin. What right does he have to invade Ukraine? Look at the number of people who have died. Look at what he's done to the economy of his own country. There are bad people across the world. There will be dictators across the world. The question is not whether the world is better off with the U.S., the new U.S. foreign policy or not, is what is the intention of the United States of America? What does America want? You know, is America ready to finance this campaign? America is broke.
Okay, well,
you know America. You know America is broke.
We're 100 trillion. We're at 100% of our GDP. Yes, we are the most indebted country in the world.
Yeah. So if America is broke, how much more? Let me use bad English. Broker do you want America to be? America is broke. They can't afford to continue supporting freedom across the world when they are broke. Now, the G20, the 20 nations coming together, if they stop using the US dollar, America is going to be in big trouble. Now, I read a report the other day. China wants to make all the cars in the world. They are making, the average car in America is $50,000. You can get a car in China for $10,000, $20,000. You have a 100% tariff to stop Chinese cars coming to America. China today makes amazing machines, amazing automobile. Think of what that will do to the U.S. economy if everybody stops buying Ford, GM, Chrysler, they stop buying American cars. That's trillions of dollars down the drain.
I agree. I mean, this is the tough thing about foreign policy, is that economic policy, is critical. I mean, yeah, I understand about tariffs. I understand that, you need to, protect American, manufacturers, American consumers, and all of that. You have to do that, but
right.
But the issue to me, once again, this is me and what we talk about in the show, is that, without America, trying to stop the bad people in the world. I mean, we do have the greatest military in the world. Would you agree with that? We have the greatest military in the world?
Definitely. No competition there.
Okay, so if the greatest military might in the world decides to no longer protect democracy and freedom, and what's going to happen with the world? I mean,
First of all,
go ahead.
Dane, it's got to be paid for. Your weapons, you have the best weapons in the world. It probably cost 10 times what it'll cost if the Chinese made it, the Taiwanese made it, or the Russians made it. Very expensive weapons. Your military is second to none in the world. Somebody has to pay for it. Now, let me ask you another question. On the average, people who run for president of the United States or governors of states, how many of them have been around the world like you? It's a question of perception. I remember a comedian said, why do Europeans know more about the world than Americans? And he said, in America, you can drive for 5 days and you're still in the same country, from New York to Los Angeles and back. In England, you drive for 2 hours, you're in a different country, speaking a different language. So your perception of the world is different when you're in Europe, is different when you're in Africa, is different when you're in Asia. The typical American is happy to be an American, happy to travel around America, knows everything about American policy, knows very little about foreign policy, reads about Second World War, First World War, has no knowledge about the Russian-Ukraine war except what they watch on CBS, ABC, NBC, or CNN. So the way you educate Americans, the way they think and the way they live in such an amazing country. You go north, you're in Canada, you think you're in America. You go south, you're in Mexico, and you think it's a colony of America. I mean, you live in a continent, and your mindset is different. So the world is not as safe as it ought to be, but the American cannot see it that way. You're just not raised that way.
No, I agree. I agree. You know, I always argue that every American needs to travel the world, and I think that and not just go to somewhere like London or Paris, like to go to the real world.
Right.
Because London and Paris, as wonderful they aren't real world. And
Right.
I think the world would be a different place if Americans understood more. Like being here in the Philippines, or going to Southeast Asia and other countries like Vietnam, or going to Peru, or going to an understanding, or even going to the Middle East and understanding
Correct.
issues there, and understanding about the Palestinians versus the Israelis, and understanding the difference between Sunnis versus Shias. I mean, all this is critical. And if I could do anything as an American, I would encourage Americans to travel more and to understand more, and not to be so selfish. And Americans are selfish. I mean, I love my country, but we are selfish, and so we think that we control the world, yet we don't control the world, because we only look at it through one lens, as you're talking about.
Right.
But all these things that we're talking about here, because we're going to take a break here in 1 second, because this first part of the show is about setting the stage for what's going to happen in 2026. And I do believe that based on this conversation, what we're talking about is that what's central to the future, and this is not some egotistical American speaking, in my opinion, but what's central to the future, and what we'll talk about in the next segment, is what has happened to America and America's role. Because I'll end this first segment with this question. Do you think that America and what happens in 2026 fundamentally will be shaped by what America does? Yes or no?
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
I agree.
And I'm going to say this, The only thing that American men like now is not to marry American women, but to marry foreign women. Now, maybe you can answer that question.